welcome to Nobody's Listening, the podcast where I sit here and talk to myself because nobody else cares what I have to say. This week, I'm going to be talking to myself about what it's like working in the medical field during the end of the world. For those of us who live under a rock, the world ended. COVID-19 pandemic. I always call it the end of the world jokingly. I know that it did end a lot of things in a lot of people's lives and kind of make things very difficult for just about everybody. Jeff Bezos seems like he's doing fine, but outside of that, I can't think of a whole lot of people who are having a great time. The restaurant industry, the medical field, we're all a little bit like, what's going on? Yeah, not super fun, but we're doing our best, and that's a thing. That's really all we got going for us. Those we're trying real hard. But I will probably continue to call it the end of the world because it puts a smile on my patients' faces, and the ones I like seeing them smile. I was a server before COVID-19 started. So, once again, those who live under a rock, COVID-19 is the global pandemic that's currently happening in 2021. I know what year it is. That began in 2019, or in 2020, excuse me. I mean, technically started at the end of 2019 in some countries, but kind of blew up and became a big deal in 2020. I live in New York. I was living in New York City when it started. I moved back here at the very end of February, very early March of 2020, getting out of New York City because New York City was a hot mess. And I was very, very ill. Partially because I did have COVID-19, and also partially because I was pregnant with my gremlin. He is upstairs asleep, as per usual with these. But yeah, he's wonderful, but having a baby during COVID was a little nuts, and I'll get into that also. Maybe today, probably another time though. We'll see. And since I moved back, I was working as a waitress in New York City, and I had worked as a waitress here. I'm in Western New York. Before I went to New York City, I've been a waitress. I was a hostess when I was 16, 17, and then I was a busser, and then I became a waitress at 18 because you have to be 18 to serve alcohol in the state of New York, and there wasn't a lot of places hiring servers that couldn't serve alcohol. So I started serving once I turned 18 and was allowed to hand someone a beer. And I was a server up until early 2020 when I stopped working at my job because I was having a lot of issues with the management and stuff. And as I was looking for another job, I got my phlebotomy certification. That was such a weird way to say certification. And I started looking for jobs in the medical field. And then the pandemic hit, and I moved back home, lived with my mom, and I started working as a CNA because they were emergency hiring people who had CNA training or were willing to learn to be a CNA in a day, which is incredibly insane if you ask me. Give someone a day of training, not even a day, I think that, so I had started my CNA the certification before that, but I didn't fully finish it yet. And when I came back, I was applying for jobs, and I applied for a job at a nursing home, and they were like, okay, you have to come to this like 5-hour course where we're going to teach you to be a CNA. And I was like, what? What do you mean? 5 hours. I came there in the morning, it was snowing, and I showed up at this little weird sketchy building next to this nursing home, which wasn't the one I worked at, but it was a nursing home, and they trained me, and then they were like, alright, can you start Monday? And so I went to this other nursing home, which I did not know at the time was the nursing home they were sending all of the people who were actively ill with COVID-19 to. But I needed a job really bad because, like I said, I was pregnant. And I left my mom's house. I moved in with my dad because my mom and I were not doing well at that time. And it was better for me to not live with her. And that was, we had kind of crossed the line. It was done. I was yawning all over the place, you know. And so I went and lived with my dad, and I needed a job. I needed to pay for things. I needed to eat. Not that my dad wouldn't let me eat his food or anything. I needed to get myself to be independent and get my own place because I didn't want to be living with either of my parents. I wanted to live with Moose, who was jumping around from place to place, also actively working very hard to try and get us into somewhere that would be ours. And with the pandemic and everything, it was very difficult. So we got that handled eventually, but I worked at this nursing home, and everyone was sick, and I saw how sick COVID-19 really made people very early on, because I started out by being one of those people that was like, oh, it's just the flu, it's not that big a deal. And then I had it, and I recovered pretty well because I'm in good shape. I'm a young person. I'm only 21 years old, so I was only 20, right? He nodded. I was only 20, so the only real downside I had was that I was pregnant, and so I recovered very well. I had long-term effects, but I still have some issues, but it wasn't as bad as it could have been. So I started out being like, oh, this isn't as big of a deal as people are making it out to be. I wore a mask. I washed my hands, but I wasn't that concerned, really, until I started working at a nursing home. I'm working at a nursing home early in the pandemic when they were like not letting people share a room, which that nursing home, most people were in a double room. The only people who were really sharing rooms were people who had been living together the whole time, people who they couldn't really move very well, or there was a married couple, and that married couple, the one died of COVID, and then the next one died because she didn't want to keep going. She just, like, her husband would make sure she ate and took care of her, even in the nursing home. Not that the aides and the nurses didn't take care of her, just it was different, you know. It was her husband, and so she like died of a broken heart. It was truly sad. It was tragic. And being that I was pregnant, I spent a lot of my time being the person they just had sit next to the sick people who were dying and try to comfort them, because I couldn't move people really effectively. I was a horrible CNA. I would go in and I would do care on these people, you know, help bathe them and help them with but I had a lot of trouble moving people because I had this big old watermelon stuck up my shirt. I got very big pretty early on. and I was like second trimester, and then early third trimester while I worked there, and I was just huge. So, but I remember this particular nursing home, and I'm not going to name the nursing home here because I don't think that that's appropriate. But the health department came through and they were investigating because it's where they sent all the really, really, really sick people at this one. It was, and when they saw they were letting this pregnant girl just work there, they got mad. The health department got really mad, and we were not being given proper PPE, which is another thing. The company did their best. It was not necessarily the company themselves that made it hard to get the PPE. It was just that there was a lot of limiting in supplies early on. And so we wore our masks around. We couldn't take those off. And it would switch every day. So we had lab coats, and then it was full body suits and respirators, and then it was body suits plus lab coats, and then it was lab coats and aprons, and then it was and we never had just aprons, but it was always like 2 layers of things. And then obviously your gloves. And then it was, we're going to put a sticker on the door and say if they are actively have COVID, if they are in their 2-week quarantine, which they did 3 weeks at this nursing home just to be safe because these were elderly people. And so it was they were very high risk elderly people. And they had this person as clear. And I remember there being a couple of clear stickers before I left. And then all of a sudden, the week I left, it was all, like, I want to say it was like pink stickers were active COVID-19 cases. And so we saw like a little drop when people were like, oh, things are going to get better, it's going to be fine. And it was just a spike. And then I started working for the hospital I work for now, which is a mediocre hospital. Well, I mean, they're a great hospital, but it's a mediocre company to work for, even though a lot of people work for them. They're not actually that bad. I just don't like doing my job most of the time. I don't hate it, but it is what it is. It's a job. It's not like my dream job, and it's not where I'm going to stay. I'm just working this job until I get to where I want to be, until I get to the next step, But that's beside the point. I'm just tangenting because that's all I ever do with my life. I remember I got hired at this job. They called me and they were like, hey, hi, this is person. Do you still need a job? And I was like, yes, please, thank you. And so I started there. I actually remember my interview with that job was over Zoom. It was when they were first shutting things down, and people weren't really doing in-person interviews anymore, so we did a Zoom interview, and I got myself all dressed up. I don't know why I'm wearing this earbud just because it feels weird to have it dangle, but my microphone is actually over here, and I want to touch it, but I'm not going to, but I'm going to, my microphone's over here. I know not everyone can even see me. I don't know why I did that, but I remember getting all dressed up on top. I think I just wore random pants that I had. I might have been wearing pajama pants, and sitting in my mom's bedroom to make it look like I was very professional, and doing my Zoom interview. Early in the days of Zoom interview. Which now, I feel like every job is a phone interview and a Zoom interview. Yeah. I'm drinking my pink lemonade. So I started that job in the end of May. And just for reference here, I was due in August with my son. I'm a phlebotomist, so it was a lot less sick people, but I dealt with a lot more people. I still deal with a lot of people, obviously, because I haven't changed jobs. I deal with tons of people every day, and so I started doing that job at the end of May. It was May 26th of 2020, and it was very funny to get hired on when they didn't know I was pregnant when I interviewed, and then just being like, oh, there's a belly. Do we ask about the belly? No, we don't ask about the belly. And everyone just being like, and then one person being like, so when are you due? And I was just like, what you talking about? With my little bump. And I just like told them, and they were like, oh, okay, yes, we all thought you were pregnant, we just didn't want to ask because we're not rude, except for her, she's rude. But now, a year and some change later, about a year and a half after the whole thing exploded, what it's like to work in the medical field is insane. Because I've worked since early in the pandemic, and now it is August of 2021. So coming from, we'll say March, was because I think that's when all the shutdowns happened. March of 2020 into August of 2021. That's a long time to be dealing with people. That's a long time to people. It's enough time to have like 2 babies. Did I do that? No. Will I do that? No. But it's a long time. And I remember starting out thinking, yes, this will all end soon, and people coming in, and we had the like hand sanitizer that smelled like tequila, and then leaving for maternity leave and coming back, and we all had like Purell hand sanitizer, and things were getting better. And not that we thought the pandemic was over at that point, but because August of 2020, no one was like, this is done. We were just kind of like, at that point, this is life. And having all the masks and stuff, it was very strange to return to that. But I came back and things seemed a lot more organized. So I worked from May until August in this disorganized chaos that was still happening at that point in time, where people are yelling at you. They're like, I don't want to wear a gosh darn mask. I don't want to do this. No, this is all fake. I came back in November, actually, I think. Yeah, it was right after Halloween, and people were like, yep, got my mask on. Trudging through. And now, it's a year later from the time I left, and people walk in and they're like, why do I need a mask? I don't want to wear a gosh darn mask again. And I'm like, what? They're like, well, I'm fully vaccinated. I don't care. Didn't ask. I'm happy for you, and I hope you continue to do that. But I didn't ask. And I need you to step out of my face. Things that I've had to deal with because I am a healthcare worker are not making as much money as people who work at fast food. That's fun. Really love that, actually. Probably my favorite part. Almost daily now I get told, because before I would get, recently, because now, for anyone who may be watching this in the future, I don't know why, we are at that point in August of 2021 where the mask mandate was lifted from anywhere except medical facilities. It was never lifted for medical facilities. And now it is reinstated in a lot of places where it was lifted. And we are struggling because people come in like, why do I need a mask? And I say, because, we need to make you wear them. It's part of our policy. It's company policy. Medical facilities, you're required to wear a mask. Well, my doctor didn't say that. My doctor's a private practice. They're not associated with hospital in which you work at. And I'm like, well, we require them. And they're like, well, that's stupid. I don't want to. I'm fully vaccinated. And I'm like, I did not ask. Sir, I just need you to wear your mask. And patients are always saying, like, I don't want the vaccine. Like, they'll either be like, oh, I wish everyone would get the vaccine, which I personally think it should be a personal choice. I think everyone should be educated properly, and I think that as someone who has educated themselves to understand the subject matter better, I think it is the best choice to be vaccinated for the majority of people. If you disagree with that, that is fine. I am not here to tell you that you're an idiot or wrong or anything, because obviously we are all allowed our own choices. But I think that it is important to give people the choice, which is why I don't think that it should be a legal thing. But this argument ensues daily, at least a few times a day at my job. Patients will say to me, these masks are the reasons that we're all brainwashed, and killer clowns from outer space are gonna get you. And I'm like, okay, that's nice, Linda. Do you want a Band-Aid? Or and then there's the people who are like, that come in there and they're like, the vaccine is microchipping us. And I'm like, okay. You microchipped your dog. Got your cell phone there. That's a nice iPhone 12S Plus or whatever. I don't know. I have an iPhone. I don't know anything about iPhones, so. But okay. I personally, I was vaccinated back in January. They had offered, I think in December they started offering it to us. And I remember calling my doctor and saying, like, hey, I am nursing my son. I know that at this time there is mixed evidence on nursing mothers getting the vaccine. Do you think I should get the vaccine? And she said, yes, get it. Because the vaccine, she had said, like, you should get it because the vaccine is going to work in a way that you should be able to pass antibodies onto your baby. And I was like, okay. I trust my doctors. I personally trust doctors. You make your own choices. I don't think that they should be requiring every person in the whole world to get it just because there are some people who it goes against their religious and cultural beliefs. I think that if you genuinely don't get vaccines because of that reason, then I disagree with your choices, but they are not my choices to make, and therefore it doesn't matter what I think. I am just a lady on the internet. I think that if you are all for getting vaccines, then do it. We can be vaccine buddies together. I think that another thing people oftentimes forget is that medical workers are people. I know I'm a human being, and I like to be treated like one. And people love to come in there and tell me that I'm stupid and that I have, like, an interaction that I had the other day. A patient, I came back from lunch, back to work. I said home from lunch, yeah, because I live at the lab. And a patient was yelling at me saying, "There are 3 of you." It said one of the people here just went to lunch, actually. I just got back, and she left. And he's like, "Well, you need to staff things better." And I said, "I don't get much say in this. I just work here. The only difference between you and me is I work here, and they pay me to be in here, and you are just here. But I hold no more power than you do. Except I'm the one who's about to stab a needle in your arm, so maybe stop being rude to me." And then there's people who consistently yawn all over the place. There's people who consistently want to tell me that I don't know what I'm doing, and that I'm a sheep, and that vaccines are a waste of our time and money, and the vaccine is full of poison. It's not full of poison. There's a lot of things that are full of poison on this planet, but medical facilities it's not like they're trying to control population or anything. I think that it's just a ridiculous thing that's happening now. I guess the moral of the story here is treat your medical workers like they're human beings, because we're trying really hard. And we just want to be cared for and respected, because everyone deserves respect, and fast food workers should get respected for what they do. They work hard. I know plenty of people have worked in food. I worked as a server. And you should respect servers too. It's hard work. And then working in the medical field, I feel like I've never been so underappreciated in my whole life. It's part of the reason I'm so depressed 90% of the time. I definitely think that it would be a lot easier to be happy if we were in a different world. But anyways, thank you for listening to me talk to myself. I hope that you tune in next week to Nobody's Listening. And take care of yourselves. Respect people. Respect medical staff. And if you have the choice to get vaccinated and you are willing to, I hope you do so. Take care.